Here we are.
There we go.
Welcome, guys.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Oddcast podcast off the record. Hope everybody's doing well this Easter. There we go. Whoop, hold on. Chad's got volume on. Hope everybody's doing well. Had a great Easter. It's good to see everybody back in here again. I've been reading through the chat. Hello to everybody, by the way.
Hey there.
With us today is a gentleman by the name of Matt. That's all I'm going to give you. I'm not going to give you his last name. I told you the topic today was going to be what a live firsthand experience of what actually happened on J6. You know, we hear so much of what the media tells us and, you know, what they want us to believe, but what we never really hear firsthand of what happened. What was the day like? So I happen to know this gentleman, and he said he was there, and we talked for quite a while about it. And I said, hey, would you like to tell people? And he said, yeah, since nobody can get in trouble for it anymore. So, Matt, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here, brother.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
So we'll get started really quick here. I'm just going to ask you, basically, why did you attend? What was your intention of going to the rally? What did you just want to see in the speech, or what was your full intention of that?
I mean, a little bit of both. I, like so many people, kind of got more into politics once Trump started running, and you kind of saw what was happening, and there was a big disparity in the media, where like they were just, it seemed like you were getting two sides to every story, but it was like two separate stories all the time. And I knew somebody that was going to go, and the person they were going to go with backed out, and he had asked if I wanted to go, and I was like, sure, because I've never been to a rally, never been to a protest, never been to anything like that. But it was one of those where, I mean, he was paying for it, so I got to go, and it was to be able to see what really is going on. You know, like I wasn't everywhere, that day. I didn't see everything everywhere, but obviously I saw quite a bit. And so it's just one of those where being able to go and like, okay, I want to see if this is really happening. I want to see if this is really happening. And that way, we've gotten so accustomed to just trusting what we're being told by other people, and because it's just hard to get there.
Yeah.
So that was my main motivation for going, was just, I want to see what the reality of what's happening. Are people being bussed in? Are people dropping bricks off? Are there, is it really as bad as it seems? Is it this, that? So that was the main motivation for going.
What, I know you were there the day before as well, correct?
Yes.
Tell us what you did the day before.
So we actually stayed at the JW Marriott, which is like 2 or 3 blocks from the White House. I mean, if you look it up, I mean, it's just right there. So we spent the day before kind of walking around DC. There was a little empty space that's next to the hotel, and there was kind of like a pre-rally that was going on. So there were bands playing. There were people giving speeches. The media was everywhere. They had a lot of DC boarded up as we were walking around, but we went up to the Lincoln Monument. We went over to the Washington Memorial. I mean, we went all over the place, and there were people everywhere. There was merch trucks everywhere selling, shirts and hats and all kind of stuff. There were the food trucks everywhere. The first day it was really just more of a gathering. There wasn't really any pro or anti-protest. It was just everybody just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, you kind of described it to me as like a big, like hippie,
like a Trump fest. Yeah, like a Trump fest.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, there was just the smell of dope everywhere. Like, it was pretty much just people hanging out. It really was. And you definitely, there were areas where you saw like those, giant mega buses. So people were getting bussed in. I mean, I don't know if they were for or against, but definitely there was quite a lot of people there just the day before.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just walked around and basically were just seeing DC.
That was pretty much it. I haven't been to DC in probably 20 years. And so,
cool trip.
Yeah, like the 8th grade DC trip. That was probably about right. Yeah. So, just be able to walk around the city and see. And, again, it was very just mundane the first day. Different areas, just food trucks parked on the sides, different areas had bands playing, just people gathering. The main thing that was happening was right next to the hotel that we were at, is where that big gathering was. And that's where a lot of the media was and people that were there giving speeches. I ended up walking around a lot, so I wasn't hanging out at that particular spot. But I think even Michael Flynn was one of the people that was there giving speeches that the day before. So there was, it was just basically just everybody kind of hanging out, just getting ready for the next day's rally.
Okay. That's cool. So really there was you saw no violence. Nobody was probably angry about anything. Everybody, like you said, everybody was having a great time.
Yeah. Like really, there wasn't even much, like the anti-protesters that you see all the time. There wasn't like Antifa or like the Trump haters and people like that. There really wasn't a lot of those people out there yelling. It was just everybody just kind of chilling. I mean, it was like if you didn't know any better, it was just another day in DC.
Okay.
Wow.
If they hadn't had the thing going on next to the hotel, it would have just been another day in DC, because there were tons of people at the Lincoln Memorial. Just there were a lot of people just actually sightseeing, just checking it out. And I'm sure a lot of those people were going to the rally the next day, but a lot of people took that opportunity to walk around and check it out. But
did a lot of people have like Trump gear or that day?
I would, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, people were not scared to be walking around with the flags and the Trump hats. But again, most of DC was closed. The Smithsonian was closed. All the restaurants were closed. They had the buildings boarded up. They didn't move any of the homeless, so there was still like the tents everywhere, and covered up the vents and all that stuff. So
it kind of makes me wonder the fact that they boarded up everything in DC. You've never had an issue at any Trump rally. Okay, there was never any Trump rally that was anywhere. There were never windows broken. There was never anything caught on fire. I mean, there was nothing like that. So you got to kind of think what were they thinking or planning that they would have to board up windows and close businesses for that day? It kind of just makes you think about that. Were they?
Well, I think it was 2016 or whatever, his inauguration, when they destroyed DC on the way out.
That's true.
It was kind of like, I mean, any large gathering, you're going to have that potential of like something's going to happen. So I could see why they would do that, especially again, like that's what happened at the inauguration, but it wasn't by the Trump supporters. It was by all the people mad that he won.
Can you see that question?
I cannot.
It says, does he believe there was FBI and plants in the crowd like they're saying there was?
Well, they admitted that there was, and I definitely know that you're talking about like the day of January 6th. Then because numerous times throughout the day, people would point out certain people in the crowd and be like, call them out like informant or cop or even Antifa. Like, because there were definitely different times where there would be people trying to get people to go up to the building. Like, we got to get in there. We got to do this. And more often than not, like I didn't see anybody like, yeah, let's do that. It was most of the time the crowd was like, no. And they were yelling at them, like calling them out. And there were definitely people in there that were trying to do stuff. And I definitely had passed. I didn't realize it until after it all came out, but I definitely, at one of the times when that Ray Epps dude was trying to get people, I was around him one of the times, because I remember one of the older ladies that was there, she started yelling at him like, don't be trying to get people to do that. And then she started calling him a undercover or something like that. And
I've seen those videos where they were, calling him a Fed and everything else. But before we get that far, let's go ahead and start with the day. How did your day start off?
So we went over to the morning, the rally. About 9:30ish, we walked over to the Washington monument there, and I mean there were just tons and tons of people. I've been to a few concerts, but I've never seen that many people. There was a lot of people there, and I know I sent you some of the pictures and things like that. It was a very just chill day. Like, everybody's kind of talking to everybody. You're finding out people from, where they're from, what they're here for, what they're really wanting, what's going on. A lot of people were just mad and felt like they hadn't been listened to. There was a lot of confusion over the election, and everybody keeps saying, an election is only as strong as the people who believe in it. And it was just a lot of questions, and people just felt like they weren't getting heard.
Right.
And so that was a lot of what it was people just that were there, and that was it. Like, everybody's just kind of hanging out. Again, it's a large crowd. Everybody's just having a good time, just dope going everywhere. There's a flag getting it keeps moving across the crowd, a big giant flag that keeps weaving in and out of the crowd. Everybody's kind of moving it. And then they just had the speakers coming on. We tried to get pretty close, but there was so many people, and I think they were camped out. Like, it was hard to get, move forward in the crowd because there were so many people.
One of the questions I have is, did you hear, I mean, I'm sure you were there for a lot of the speakers. Did you hear anybody promoting violence or anything like that?
No.
From the speakers?
No. Yeah, and even in the morning rally, there wasn't anybody like, yeah, we got to get over there. We got to do like that. Later on in the day, there were those people who were like screaming and mad at Pence about he could have done this or that. I mean, you're always going to have those people that are diehards, but
sure.
In the crowd, for the most part, it was just, no, nobody was ready to rush over there, pitchforks in hand and torches, blazing and take over. Like, nobody was trying to do that. None of the speakers that were up there I didn't even feel like the speeches were like very fiery. When Trump was speaking, sure, because he can be pretty passionate when he talks, but I didn't really feel like even the other speakers that were up there. I mean, it was just, they just really were there's something going on here. You need to go over there and you need to just make sure that they're hearing you, that you want to be heard, and that something doesn't seem right. And it just, that was, I can't stress that enough, that was the basic. Out of everybody I talked to, it was just, they just felt like nobody was taking their concerns seriously. Nobody was listening. It was just, nope, this is what's happening. Boom, boom, boom. Even though it's like, wait a minute, there's a lot of questions here, and what's going on. And
yeah, well, we saw that with the court systems, them not even wanting to look at evidence,
right.
And that just seemed a little off. That why
right,
would if there's no problem, then
look at it.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that they didn't even want to look at it. And it's like, again, an election is only as strong as the people who believe in it. If you don't
Correct.
trust the system, then it doesn't mean anything.
Right. So the day progressed. You were there for Trump's speech and everybody's speech. Now, I read a statistic, fact today, that I'm going to put this in quotation marks, the riot, because I don't like to call it that, started roughly 18 minutes before Trump was even done speaking. So there were already people there starting issues at the Capitol. Did you see any of that, or do you know that or not?
I do not know that. No. I don't know, because we were from where we were at to walk over to the Capitol building is a good like 15-20 minute walk, something like that. So, were there people there at the Capitol while everybody else was at the rally? That could have been. I have no clue.
Right. Yeah. Obviously you can't be everywhere at once. I mean, that'd be pretty cool, but you can't.
Right.
So I know in the speech itself, he said, march peacefully and patriotically and let your voices be heard. Yep. And that's, Erica and I watched it from the start of the morning when we were watching different podcasters like we do, but they do like multiple screens of cameras that are there, other people filming the crowd and everything. So we watched all these different cameras and saw all these different things happening. And, we were like, wow, that's pretty crazy. Look at this. Why is that cop doing that? Why is this person doing that? We saw videos of people changing clothes into Trump gear. We saw police. Now, I'm a pro police guy, but I saw police doing things they would to aggravate the crowd. I saw people aggravating the police. It was, that's what we saw on television. Now,
Right.
you're the first person I've ever got to talk to that was there. What kind of things did you see?
Well, so at the rally, there wasn't anything really chaotic or anything like that, and there really wasn't even. I don't even recall seeing any police at the rally. Like, where you see like a lot of these other protests and all this, where there's cops everywhere. Like, I don't really recall seeing any cops hanging out. I'm not saying they weren't there. I'm sure they were, but there wasn't a large police presence. So yeah, we get through the rally and it ends, I don't know, 12:30, 12:40 or something like that. And it finishes up with, march down there and make your voices peacefully heard. Like, nobody said go down there and fight. Nobody said go down there and tear anything up. No, that just, that's just not what happened. So after the rally ends, and again, I don't know, I'm sure there were people at the Capitol to start with, but when you look at a lot of the videos that they show of any of the chaos going on, it's a lot of people.
Right.
And there were a lot of people at the Capitol, or at the rally in the morning. So were there people at the Capitol? Sure, I'm sure there were, but the large groups, just no, because everybody was at the rally.
Right.
So after the rally was over, we went back to the hotel for about 45 minutes to an hour. So the first wave of whatever happened, like, I did miss that. So, people marched over. As we marched over about an hour later, and there were still a ton of people on the streets marching to the Capitol. But as we got there, and in some of the pictures you see as I'm walking up, I mean, the crowd is already massive there, and they've already taken up so much space. So as far as, I'm sure that people fought with the police. I mean, I've seen the videos of that, and I think that happens in everything. When I was there, I saw the bit of altercations that I saw was more of the crowd fighting with the people trying to fight with the police than I did with the people fighting with the police. Like, every time there was something like that happening, the crowd usually was pretty quick to jump on that and be like, you stop that, that's not what we're here for. Now, I'm not saying that happened every time, because again, I wasn't everywhere, but I have seen plenty of videos where there were some pretty chaotic people, and there was definitely some chaotic moments. My big thing I feel like gets mischaracterized with the day is they act like it was an entire day of chaos.
Right.
And I'm sure that first 45 minutes when those people got there, because again, I got there about 10 or 15 minutes after Ashley Babbitt got shot, which was probably the most chaotic part of the entire day, was when that crowd had gotten into that particular hallway and were trying to bust through. Otherwise, it was pretty mundane. Even when you're walking up into the crowd, like, everybody's talking. Everybody's just chilling. There's a lot of people that were chanting as you get further into the crowd. And even once later on, when I got up to the building, like, there was a lot of people yelling, but I never saw anybody busting windows. I never saw anybody fighting with the police without the crowd jumping in. I never saw somebody just getting let loose.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when we were watching the videos, it looked like blocks and blocks of people there for the event, that it was covering such a huge area. And, they were talking about camping, overnight, and just they were delighted to be there, and just I do remember those parts of the videos where it seemed supportive of each other, and very excited to be there, and talking about how long they had to travel to get there. And there was a lot of positivity that I remember from the videos we watched that day.
Oh, absolutely.
But as we know, the media is going to pick what's the here we go, some pictures, what they can sensationalize. So tell us about, where's this picture at? Was this the rally?
Looks like that's at the rally in the morning. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's at the morning rally. And I mean, honestly, like, if you look at just the amount of people that were there, I mean, if that was like an insurrection, that was like the worst attempt ever.
Absolutely.
But there was I didn't talk to, and I'm not saying that there wasn't somebody there for that intention, but I did not talk to one single person of all the people I talked to that day at the rally and the day of that were there. Like, we got to take over the government. We got to do this. Like, there was at least nobody that I talked to had like a plan of like, yeah, after we do this, this is what's. for the most part, a lot of people really, they wanted like somebody to walk out of that Capitol right there, up high there, and just be like, all right, we hear you. We're going to hold off here. We're going to take a second look at this.
Right. That's the way I saw it too. I mean, I wasn't there, but on watching it on TV, that's what I think that's what needed to happen.
That was, it was no different than every time that a Republican wins, the Democrats they object to the electorate and to the certification of the electorate. And because they never have any grounds, it always gets voted down, and the election gets certified. I mean, if this protest would have happened the day before, the day after, the word insurrection just wouldn't even be possible. Like, the only reason they get to use that word is because Congress was in session and it interrupted the certification. Otherwise, they would not even be able to say that it was an insurrection. That's the stupidest thing.
What William says, clearly the media and deep state, mostly but not always Democrats, took advantage of the situation to portray it in the worst light. Now, William, I'm definitely going to agree with you. I think the deep state is Republicans and Democrat. It's a certain group of both. It's what I call old Washington, people that have been there way too long, that control everything. That's what I think the deep state is. And it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans as well. We like to call them rhinos, but how often do you actually look and see a politician there's a few that are doing good for things that you want taken care of. Most of them seem to be just lining their pocketbooks, if that term still works. But again, I could talk about that for days when we look at politicians making way more money than they're paid. So, but keep showing some of the pictures here, because now this is still the rally, it looks like, or were you on your way to the?
Nope. So that is when I got to the Capitol there.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, look at all those people.
I know.
Wow.
I mean, everybody wearing their Trump gear and their flags, and like you see the gentleman with the mask. He's a little bit older. There was rarely anybody was wearing some masks. I mean, there are some people that were, but a lot of them, you could kind of see like the Antifa people in the crowd, because they dress a certain way. They've got their backpacks. They do that, and they were pointed out. That's one of the things. Like, I also, as I look back on that, I watch the videos now of like conservatives and people going into these Elon Musk protests and all this, and the way that they're instantly shouted at and chased and surrounded by everybody. Meanwhile, at this rally, when people were cops getting pointed out, when in the crowd, when Antifa was getting pointed out and Trump haters, it was the crowd pointing them out and like booing them basically, but nobody was surrounding them. I didn't see anybody even try to fight an Antifa person. Like, I wasn't everywhere. It was a large, I mean, there had to be 10,000 people there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a tremendous experience to just, as I was walking up and you just see the mass of people. And even at the morning rally, as I'm like filming around and looking, and there's just so many people. And it's like, all right. And we're here, they're talking, they're yelling. Nobody's setting buildings on fire. Nobody's killing anybody in the crowd, even though they want to say like cops were killed. Like nobody was killed that day other than Ashley Babbitt.
Right. I did read that 4 other people, this is what the media said, 4 people died that day. Ashley Babbitt, 2 from heart attacks. They weren't the cops.
Right.
And then 1 had an amphetamine overdose and died or something like that.
Yeah, but no violence related.
Right. Then the next day, Brian Sicknick passed away. First, they claimed he was hit with a fire extinguisher over the head.
Yep.
Proven to be wrong. Then they said he was, I think, beaten with a flagpole. Proven to be wrong.
Yep.
This picture, he died.
Sorry, this picture right here that you see that's on with the orange vested cops and all that. Right here is where like there was, where I was talking with groups of people, and right here, this is what they wanted. They wanted somebody to come out here right at this moment and just say, all right, we hear you. We're going to take another look at this. We're going to investigate this. Like right here this is where like there was for whatever reason, that this, like when I got it this close, this is what a lot of the people were wanting when they were talking. because I kept moving closer and closer in the crowd. And it was weird because like, yeah, like there was different expectations as I moved closer, like, oh, we want to be heard. But right here, a lot of the people up here really wanted somebody to come out, a set of politicians to come out and just say, okay, like, we hear you. We're going to look at this.
That is interesting that it changed with your location.
Yeah, because you had like towards the back of the crowd, you just had like the people who were just there. You know what I mean? Like they're there to show support, but they're not there. They're not trying to do anything. They just wanted to be a statistic of the crowd.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you at any time get to chat with any of the police officers at all, or? I mean,
me directly, no. But there was the one video I sent you that shows the people chatting with the cops, and they're taking selfies and they're talking with them, and the cops are just chill. Like nobody. I mean, obviously nobody's talking to the cops in this picture because they're just way up there. But when I got closer to the building, those cops, there was one side as you walk around. It's what's crazy as you walk around. So I showed you that video. People are talking to the cops and just taking the selfies, and it's just very chill. I went around to another side, and there's a group, and they're screaming and yelling and hollering, and they're hollering at the cops too. And then you go around to a different side, and it's just people who are protesting, but they're not really yelling directly at anybody. They're just, stop the steal and so on and so on.
We're gonna show the riot video, okay, or the video, okay. Not the riot video.
Yeah, I mean, again, you watch these BLM riots in the summer of 2020 where it's all day, just stuff happening, burning, buildings are on fire. Like this, for the most part, I wouldn't even call this a protest. I mean, really, because the people in the front were doing stuff. Yeah, right there.
Here, go and play it. So there's people talking to the cops.
Look, he's taking a picture. You see that old man kneel down and take a picture?
So
and that like I told you, that's literally like 45 minutes after Ashley Babbitt was shot. That video right there. Wow. So they were so scared of what was about to happen. It got to such chaos, and then here we are. We're just chilling. And I get it. Cops are taught to de-escalate and this and that, but at that point, like if you're going to try to say that they were all this scared and it was this dangerous, like I just don't buy that. Come on.
I agree. I in watching it that day, the only video I even watched the J6 committee hearings, and I obviously wasn't busy at the time, but to watch that committee not show footage that I had seen that day or of that day, and then bring people, what was it, AOC that said she thought she was going to get raped and she wasn't even anywhere close. You could tell that there was something going on, that this might have been a possible, I'm not trying to read this into anybody, but I think it was possible setup just by watching all of the footage and then all the lying that went on afterwards after, all these videos and everything came out. And there's still thousands and thousands of video that the J6 committee never released.
Yeah.
In fact, they hide it. They keep it, you don't get to see it. So what were they showing there? Probably what we're seeing in this video. Lots of peace, love, and happiness.
Yeah. I mean, listen, any large rally group, any large gathering with passionate people, obviously violence and chaos is going to happen. That's just what's going to happen. Even at something like this, we hope that it doesn't. And a lot of people were really pissed about this because it kind of cheapened what was really trying to be, promoted here. But they're only going to show, it's like they just show about 40 minutes of chaos out of, literally 6 hours of the day.
Right.
That was just pretty mundane and just people standing around like this. Most of the time, people didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. Am I supposed to be doing something? Like, I'm just here. I'm here. I want to be a number. I want to be part of the crowd that shows, look, we have a mass of people. But it really just, that's the thing. and when you look, every time that you want to bring up violence on this protest or that protest, the Tesla burnings, this and that, they always go, well, January 6th. That's why they harp on this so much, because for the most part, they have this one thing. I mean, most of us glued our TVs for an entire summer watching the 2020
Absolutely.
protest. And you know, when you have the famous one where the reporter is talking about a mostly peaceful protest while the building is on fire behind him. And you're like,
Right.
I can't believe any of this anymore. And for
Well,
those of us, you know, not to age us, but for those of us that remember the LA riots after Rodney King,
Right.
you know, you see the same thing where it's like it's just fires and vandalism and people getting assaulted, and it's just nonstop by the same people who scream tolerance.
Well,
And so
you know,
all they can do is scream January 6th, and they have to make it worse than what it is.
we literally watched that whole summer. She probably got angry with me, but I would literally watch as many riots, protests as I could, because I'm trying to learn the what mental state these people are in, and watching the J6 compared to summer of 2020 and the BLM George Floyd riots, and seeing the amount I think they estimated $1 to $2 billion worth of damage done in the summer of 2020 in those riots. 14 people lost their lives. There was just so much. I looked up the arrests, and it said 14,000 people were arrested over that summer for those riots.
Yeah.
Of those, almost all of them were arrested and released right away for blocking the road, for trespassing, for whatever. You know, we know that people had set up funds for people to get out of jail, and they'd be back the next day doing the exact same thing. So when somebody compares J6 to the summer of 2020, I'm like, you know, if you really want to talk about a dark day, I'd say a dark summer, 2020 was by far darker than the J6. I've heard J6 compared to as the worst event in U.S. history. Okay, I would kind of think that 9/11 would probably be pretty bad, and that's a whole nother topic that we're going to hit on a show. But there's so much other things that have happened. The Civil War is another big thing that's happened in this country. I mean, the lives that were taken in that war. So when they started comparing J6 to that stuff that was that bad, I really wanted to get in depth even more and find out, you know, why is the media feeding us this? What is the narrative? And I see so many people still to this day, Matt, that say it's the worst thing ever. And that you're right. They still claim everything's J6. Well, look at Trump, J6, 34 felony counts. Okay, well, you know, some of those people that were involved in those have had to be fired, and you know, those people.
Well, and even that, this is where like people, they get trapped in their bubble. Like the reality of that is 34 counts. It was because it's one charge that was 34 pieces of paper that were signed that had to do with this payment. And so the reality is even if you wanted to believe every part of what he did, like he slept with her and he paid her off, like it's not illegal to sleep with her. It's not illegal to pay her off. It's not illegal for her to sign an NDA. It is illegal for her to blackmail him. It's not illegal, like I said, for him to pay it off. He paid her. He paid the lawyer. He paid the taxes for the money, so she got the full amount. Because he ended up paying like $260,000 for a $130,000 extortion fee. So even if you want to believe all that, and then because he put it in the books as what legal fees instead of porn star hush money, like financial fraud or financial misbookkeeping or whatever is only a misdemeanor. And this was the whole thing with that, is the reason everybody was so mad. They basically, as I've understood it, Bragg basically said that he defrauded the American people of the information needed to make an informed vote by him paying the porn star the hush money. And that was how he was able to roll that into a felony, because even if you want to believe everything that Trump did, he did sleep with her, he did pay it off, he did mislabel it, that's financial bookkeeping. That's like you own a business and you bought groceries with your card, and instead of saying groceries, you put company barbecue. Now that actually would be some fraud because you're not paying the taxes on that then. Whereas he simply, you know, so like that whole thing. And again, just because people get caught in this whole bubble of what they're being told. And so they don't know. And then at this point, they don't even bother to do any critical thinking beyond what they've just been told.
Right. Gene Hudson, can you put Gene's up there? Well, no, not that one. It's the last one she just put. Yeah. Those people from J6, most of them never got a hearing at all. And that's pretty much a crime. Whereas now, we're hearing, we've got an illegal alien that was in here illegally being sent back to his country. And now they're, due process. Well, what happened to the people that went to most of their due process? A lot of those people took plea deals thinking they wouldn't get any jail time, and they ended up getting 2 years. Some of them even Enrique Tarrio got 21 years in prison, and he wasn't even there. And it's because the Proud Boys were there. But if he's not there, well, it's because he planned that. That's what they kept saying. And that was a good way to try to shut all those, I'm going to call them, I won't call them right-wing groups, because I don't believe, Antifa is not a left-wing group. They're just a fascist group. Even though their name's Antifa. But they were just putting people in jail that were voicing their opinions over the time. Proud Boys went and they busted, they protected people that were, at Trump rallies. They went to, they protested against trans activists or drag queen story hours and stuff. And they were there protecting the people that were counter protesting that. And that's basically all they were doing. And yeah, they would get into fights because, when Antifa or whoever swings something at you, you're probably going to get angry and cold cock them. But I think January 20th or January 6th ended up being a punishment for all those people that we're going to make. That's why they ended up getting pardoned. An example of.
Yeah, and that's why they got pardoned. Exactly. Even though some of them, a lot of them, they like the guy, we were just talking about somebody you and I both know, and they had posted something talking about this person who got pardoned for fighting with the police on January 6th. And he got pardoned for his 20-year sentence. And you look it up, and yeah, you shouldn't fight with the police, but that's like a 7-year charge, 10-year charge at best. 20 years for fighting with a cop. Meanwhile, they're New York, you got people killing cops or assaulting cops, and then are getting let out with no bail.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think people are, and so people are missing the point. Like they're just, pardon, and that's, but it's like, yeah, but that's because they were actually robbed of their due process. They were actually, overcharged for what they did. So, and then so some of that is like you wanted to make an example out of them. Like, all right, well, now that Trump's in charge, he's going to make an example out of them too, and saying, look, you can't overcharge people. You can't as politicians raise money for people protesting and rioting and destroying things in 2020 and then go and charge these people, stupid as they may have been. Like, I'm not going to sit here and justify going into the building. Like, I would not have done that. Like,
to me, that's just a setup anyway.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're let in, I'd have been like, and even like the one guy, the good picture that he took of like him putting his feet up on, if you were on a tour, would you be able to do that? No. Like, so, I'm mixed on that. Like, I get what he was saying. I get it. But like, there's sometimes some decorum, you can't get mad at Pelosi and he'd probably be one of those getting mad at Pelosi for ripping up the State of the Union speech, yet he's going to go in there and put his feet up on her desk. And then the one guy that stole her lectern. Like, again, as we've all been stupid and we've all been like younger and done rash things, but like, come on. Now, should that guy get 10 years for that? Well, no, that's just stupid.
Well, again, we'll go back to the 2020 protests, and all those people, most of those people wore masks so that you couldn't, it didn't have nothing to do with COVID.
Right. These people
wore masks. So when you watch these protests and you see protesters throwing bricks at cop cars right there in front of the cops, or striking the cops, or throwing jars of urine on cops, none of those people really again, arrested and released. Nobody really got charged for any of that. That's, what makes that any different than what happened on J6?
Exactly. The day,
Yeah.
simply the day. And yes, there were lots of buses that had anti-protesters there.
Okay.
There, the day before, even the day of, there were lots of buses that had the anti-protesters. And the most amount of anti-protesters I will say that I saw was on the walk up to the Capitol. A lot of them were like just lining the streets, yelling at people walking up to the Capitol.
Mhm.
And then, of
Yeah, like
course,
I
those
said,
people just be yelling back.
when we saw the videos of people underneath underneath a pine tree, get their backpacks out,
Yep.
and then guy puts on a Trump hat, puts on a Trump shirt, and grabs a Trump flag out of his thing. Kind of looks a little fishy that they didn't walk up with that stuff on, considering it was a rally that day.
Yeah.
So, there
yeah.
were I know one gentleman who I had seen on multiple BLM protests. In fact, he was a BLM protest organizer. I'll say his name, his last name Sullivan. He was talked about a little bit in the news. He was interviewed by news sites. He actually got 6 years in prison. He's one of the ones, the main one that filmed Ashley Babbitt getting shot. He was right there, filmed it, shared it, made like $60,000 or $70,000 selling that video.
Wow.
And then an independent guy we watched at the time got an exclusive interview with him and basically called him out on everything. And the guy wouldn't admit it. And he goes, well, here's a picture of you at this rally with a brick in your hand. Here's a rally with this. Oh, look, who's the organizer? And the name of his podcast name was different than his real name. So I said, well, what was he doing there? Why is he, he wasn't there just filming. Were there more Antifa people there than we're going to know about? There's again, this show is about, finding the truth in a lot of things. They call them conspiracy theories. I call them conspiracy truths in a lot of cases.
Right.
And this one's always just made my blood boil when I hear the media still talking about it to this day. And mostly it's MSNBC and CNN. But, again, people don't trust anything the media tells you. Do your own research, question everything.
Well, and it's all they have. It's all they can point to. And that's why it gets harped on so much, because, you don't see conservative protests and rallies all over the place where they're just tearing stuff up. You just don't see that.
Right.
This literally was probably the worst conservative rally that's been out there. And only because they broke some windows. And literally only because Congress was in session. Had this been January 7th, there's been protests and rallies at the Capitol since then.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
and again, this isn't even the first time that something has happened at the Capitol. So they talk about this, the worst thing. I mean, there was a bomb that was thrown into the Capitol in the 80s. So, yeah. So,
by the way, that lady became one of the members, higher ups in Black Lives Matter later on, by the way.
Yep. But it's like, people, unfortunately, people have a small attention span, an even smaller memory, and an even smaller education level in a lot of these things. And so they don't take the time to go back and go, oh, well, this happened and this happened. And, this is not the worst thing that's happened. I mean, I would say the National Guard shooting the Kent State students at that, that college shooting back in the 60s? When was that?
The 60s, early 70s.
That was probably the worst thing than January 6th.
Yeah, I agree. Let me ask you this. I read another article, and I'm not telling you where I read it at. It was definitely one of the bigger news agencies claiming that people had guns. What were baseball bats, knives? I'm trying to think what other weapons there were that they said. Now, I in video never saw anybody with baseball bats or, knives. That's different. You can hide a knife, no problem. But I also remember them saying that originally nobody was arrested with a gun except one guy.
And he wasn't even there. They arrested him because his guns were like in his truck at where he parked. I
So,
think.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, baseball bats. Yeah, there were a few people not walking around with a baseball bat, but their flag was strapped to the bat like a pole, which
Gotcha.
I can understand that. You see a lot of, you know, when the anti-protesters are there and things get chaotic, you know, I see that. But like, were people walking around with weapons? No, flagpoles. That was pretty much it. Now, yeah, technically, I mean, you know, sure, it's a weapon, but like,
Right.
no, I didn't talk to not one person that was like, oh, I got a gun or I got a knife, or obviously they probably wouldn't have even admitted that, but they weren't trying to get people together like, let's go in there and do that. You know, the people that were out there trying to get people to do stuff were like very blatantly, awkwardly obvious about it, you know? And that's why they were getting pointed out. And same with, I will say that kind of like reflecting back after that one question, like I did see a lot of buses where the day before I saw people, you know, clearly dressed like Antifa getting off those buses. But there weren't that many, at least in the crowd that I saw. Now, were they already there? I mean, were they the ones that got to the Capitol first thing while all the actual Trump supporters were at the rally? These idiots showed up and they're the ones who started chaos? That could be. You know, I'm not going to be naive and say that even diehard Trump supporters weren't fighting with the cops and causing some chaos. I mean,
Right.
there's the diehards in both groups.
Right.
So, but 99% of the day and of the crowd, people were just chilling, getting stoned, drinking, chatting, you know, like this is just bullshit about the election and yada, yada, yada. And everybody floating around their theories of how it got stolen and what happened and, you know, what they really kind of expected out of the day. I mean, there was just lots of people just chatting. I mean, there wasn't anything else to do. You know,
Right.
if you were in the middle to back, unless you were right up at the building and you were part of the activity that was yelling and protesting, for the most part, people were just standing around. It was like being in the back part of a concert out in, you know, the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. We did, I'm not sure what year it was. When did we do the truck rally?
Not well. Could have been
2019,
2020 or
2020. We did a rally around Cincinnati on 275 where everybody brings their cars and you flags and you just drive around Interstate 275 in Cincinnati. And I think they estimated at the time how many people showed up for that was, oh my goodness, like 21,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was like you're describing. Everybody met at all these different parking lots. Everybody chatted. You know, we had people drive by and flip us off. You know, everybody I knew waved. You know, it was like, hey, you're flipping us off. You know, and everybody waved. You had people on the bridges waving, and you know, it was a great time. Everybody's like, oh, this is, you know, there's no doubt this is all gonna, you know, be good. This 2020 election, yeah, it was 2019. This 2020 election is going to be incredible. And then, you know, obviously later on J6 happened and they think it's the worst thing that ever happened. And every rally that I've been around was, you know, peaceful. You had agitators. But if you flip that and let's say you're a politician and you're speaking about something that the other side doesn't like, then you get the agitators in there and they start their shit. And, you know, we watched with the 2020 summer, you know, we saw the pallets of bricks on video. People filmed them. We saw the vans pull up and them unload signs and other items, you know, to use as possible weapons. We saw all that. We saw the burning, the looting. And for people to say that J6 was worse than the summer of 2020 is just, there wasn't a politician there that's life was in danger. Guarantee it. I guarantee it. Nobody was there to harm anybody. And like you said earlier, and I'll repeat it, if that was an insurrection, it's the worst insurrection ever. If they were trying to overthrow the government, you're not going to do it with your hands.
I mean, with if you just look at the cops that they had there, and it's just math. If you just add up the amount of rounds that they had in each of their guns versus the amount of people, there would have still been 4,000 or 5,000 people left after they had exhausted everything to still flood the building and take over.
Right.
So like, it's just, and if you look to, in those videos and those pictures, I mean, there's people of all walks of life there. And most of the things, as I'm looking back on those pictures and I was sending them to you, like it's all ages. It's just, there's just everybody, and there's just different races, I mean, just people, different jobs. You know, I talked to people that were doctors. I talked to people that were just construction, because they're like, again, there wasn't anything else to do but sit and chat with people.
Yeah. Yeah. And Flat Rock, I saw your comment there, and I would agree. If there were pipe bombs that were seen, they would have definitely vacated everything around there by far. But then that story got whitewashed as well. Then, you know, they tried to bring it back up again, and then it just disappeared again. So there were so many things with that day and that time period that happened that make you question all of this. And I hope, again, I tell everybody, you know, my motto is question everything. I've been that way since high school. Well, before high school, used to get in trouble with my parents because I was that kid that go, well, why do you want me to do that? You know, that kind of questioning. That doesn't work real well. But so do you think the media and the way they promoted it, do you think, being someone that was there, that they were just trying to change everybody's, do you feel that your view changed at all about what the media said? Like the media was saying it was an insurrection. You never felt that, right?
Oh God, no.
Okay.
No, not from anybody. You know, again, I'm not going to say that there weren't people that wouldn't have done something. I mean, I will say, like, the one guy that they did arrest or whatever, that, you know, he showed up in like fatigues or something like that, and then he had like those zip cuffs, and I don't know. Like, I'm like, why would you have those? Like,
That's, yeah.
it's, you know, it's just one of those, like, I think some people just weren't really thinking, you know, and you're going to get that. I'm certainly not going to say that there aren't nuts on both sides of the fence, but to say that this was like the darkest day in America, and there's this and there's that, it's just not true.
Right.
Again, if this had happened the day before or the day after, they would not even be able to use the word insurrection. You know, I think it was just a lot of people that were there to just want to be heard, because everybody went to bed that night watching Trump be up to 300,000 votes, and then wake up in the morning and he's down 100,000. You know, like there's that one county that I watch, and they're like, well, we're not going to start counting until 8. And then like 10:30, he's down by 100,000. And it's like, you look it up, and these machines can only count 1,500, 2,000 votes per hour. Like, how the math just isn't mathing there. Like, right. At my voting place, there's one. So whether you do it paper or you do an electronic, you do a paper, you fill it out, you go up to the lady, she gives you your sticker, you put it in the machine. You do electronic, you punch in your keys, it spits out a paper. You go up to the lady, she gives you a sticker, you put it in the machine. But we have one machine. So it's how many can they count? And so I was one of those people that stayed up that night, and I watched them kick people out of polling places. Yep. And I watched them tape up the windows. And in my view, like, if you're going to tape up the windows to a polling place, every vote on both sides in that building should be void.
I agree 100%.
There's no reason to do that. There's no reason you're ever going to tell me there's a reason to cover that up.
And then the water main break that never happened. Remember they talked about a water main break, never happened.
Yep. And then you had all the videos of people like showing they had all these ballots and admitting what they were doing. And it's like, there were just a lot of questions that people felt weren't being answered. And again, when you look over, you know, had this last election not seen as many votes finally come through as happened, last election would have seriously been quite an anomaly, because if you look back over the last 20 years, they're all pretty normal.
Absolutely. Yep.
And then all of a sudden you've got 20 million people who come out of nowhere and vote.
Yep.
And then, right. And so you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So, and even now, like, we had quite a lot of people come out, but not as many. I don't think we had as many vote as in the last one.
Now, do you feel, because another problem they had with that election was that states were changing their laws and allowing people to vote, you know, up to like some of them 7-8 days after the election.
You know, like, if so many of these people hadn't come out with all these ridiculous, outlandish theories of what had happened, and they had just concentrated on simple, the wrong people changed the rules in order to allow people to vote that weren't even supposed to do it. And the fact that they changed these rules, I get it, COVID, but still, if you can't admit that what you did kind of made it a little easier to stuff the ballot boxes, if they would have concentrated more on those things, I think they could have gotten somewhere.
Yeah. And I agree that I think, the main reason J6 happens because people just wanted answers. And it wasn't near as bad as what the media made it out to be. I wanted to have you on because you and I, reconnected a couple weeks back, and you brought this up to me, and I'm like, man, this would be perfect for firsthand encounter to talk to it, what they saw. And just to kind of, I don't know how many people are going to watch this. We're going to share it out again. I'm hoping people in the chat, if you enjoyed the show, share it to friends, share it far and wide. You don't get enough of firsthand experience. We might have somebody on someday that maybe was in a different part. I don't know, and saw different things. And I'm always open to hearing both sides, but I find it very hard to talk to somebody on the other side because all they do is bring up J6, felony Trump, and all of that. You can't have a coherent conversation with them. I don't want to argue with you. I just want to see why you think the way you think.
Right.
We do have a friend of ours. She is an exceptional person. She's a Democrat. We have our talks. We don't agree on a lot, but she is the kind of person I love to talk to. And I love her to death. But there's so many people out there, and you can't talk to them. Although, you watch nowadays on interviews, and you'll see people like, well, why do you believe that this should happen? And they're like, because, well, do you know? No, I don't care. What are you out here doing? So you don't know what you're protesting for? It's just,
they're just mad to be mad.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's pretty much it.
Or they're paid to be mad.
Oh yeah. They at this point, it really is anything that is for Trump, they're against.
And that's, I know every president, every politician, every leader does things that people don't agree with sometimes. Because Matt, you and I might not agree on some things. I don't know, but there's a possibility. So if you ran for office and 90% of what you do or did is something I like, the rest of it, I'll be like, well, we're not going to agree on everything. And it's just now, it's like the way people are going after the president is, well, we don't like this. We don't want him to take this away. USAID, we can't get rid of that program. Well, you were just told how much it funded other things that weren't
They don't
good.
care.
So anyway, I don't want to get that far down it.
Yeah, they just, they're at that point where they don't care. They don't want to hear it. They're not open to change. Like I got, a lot of Democrat friends that I get into conversations with, and I can have constructive conversations, and I can understand why they think that way. And they can understand why I think the way that I do. We disagree on it, but we can say, you know what, I get your point. I think you're wrong on why you think that, but I get that. But I've got other people that I know, and family too, that are extremely liberal, and they very much are like the people who cut family off because they don't want to hear. I've never seen that before, where people are so quick to cut off friends and family because of what they vote. And it's one of those where it's majority from the other side. Like most of my friends that are Republicans, they can be like, man, them liberals are dumbasses, but and get in an argument with them, but like, you know what, whatever, I don't want to talk about it. Let's just go have a drink, go do what we're doing. No politics, but the left now, they're like, they're not gonna date you. They're not gonna invite you to their cookouts. Yes. They're not gonna, you could be brother, sister, mom, they don't even want to talk to you anymore. And it's like the party of tolerance right there.
Right. Gary Spike said something, you might not like the man, but you have to respect the office. 100%. I hated Joe Biden. I'll tell you that right now. Not in hate like I want him to die. I don't want anybody to die, but I disliked his policies. I disliked everything about him. He wasn't there mentally, and now the media admits it.
The same people who are the same people who are telling you he's the best Joe Biden that he's ever been are now admitting that they covered it up and that he wasn't.
Right.
And then they're the same people who want to tell you how bad everything is. And you're just supposed to believe them.
Absolutely. But I have to respect that he, in one way or the other, became president of the United States. He was the man to run our country.
Yeah.
I didn't think about getting a baseball bat or going throwing fire bombs and, at rallies because I wanted to beat up Biden supporters. But that's what you're seeing with the other side is you can't get into civil discord with them because you're wrong. You like Trump, then you're racist. And I'm like, oh, okay.
They go into every conversation knowing everything and with the assumption that no matter what you say, you're wrong because of what you believe.
I was watching a protest. I think it was yesterday. I can't remember what the protest was. It was a political protest. And the guy says, you're probably one of those people that says you're not racist because you have a black friend. And I thought about that. And I'm like, well, I grew up in a almost all white area. So, that's kind of something you really can't say because a lot of people, I mean, you grew up in a part of Ohio that's, in the yesteryears was probably
predominantly white.
Predominantly white. So I hate those kind of comments. It seems to be the only way they can twist Republicans or even independents now and make them look like they're racist and just call everybody a fascist and a racist and not talk about it and not have any discord about it. So,
And that kind of goes back to, so the amount of were there some violent moments that day? Well, sure. I mean, that's on video. That's definitely that's going to be everywhere. But the way that the day majorly ended was all of a sudden word started going through the crowd that everybody had to leave because they were just going to start arresting anybody who was there. And they were shutting down the city. They were closing all the stores, the restaurants, the gas stations. And so people were like, well, shit. So I guess we got to go. And it wasn't like, oh, no, were there people who hung out and stayed and still argue? Well, of course, you're always going to have that. But majority of the crowd, like when we left at like 5-ish or something like that, 4:35, like it's just this drove of people just walking down the street, leaving because what are we supposed to do? One, we don't want to get arrested just for being there. That's just stupid. I didn't do anything. And two, like if you didn't go and get food the day before, I mean, they shut the restaurant down in our hotel. Had we not gotten food at the store before we got into town, like we wouldn't have been eating unless we left or till the next day when we left.
And again, I'm going to go back to that's pretty the thing that really baffled me is that they had the opportunity to make boatloads of cash that day. If they didn't shut down, people would have restaurants to eat at, this, that, and the other. I think they were really counting on it coming downtown. The riots are firing people up enough to get the riots to come downstairs or downtown, like what was going on with the BLM stuff. But then they realized that the supporters, they weren't that way. We're not,
And other than the vandalism at the Capitol, nothing happened. Nobody destroyed anything in DC. Nobody raided buildings. Nobody set anything on fire. Nobody beat anybody up. Nobody raped anybody. Like everybody left. We're like, well, this sucks. We went back to our hotel, and that was when I found out that the kitchen was closed. I'm like, well, hell, at least we got something. And we just stayed there, watched the news, went to bed, and then got the next day and left.
Yeah.
I mean, it was it's nothing like what the media portrayed it. Were there some chaotic moments? Well, sure. Absolutely. Did people fight with the police? Absolutely. Was it a day of chaos and an insurrection? Just hell no. That's just so stupid. It just wasn't. Most of it was just people standing around, chatting, gathered. What are we doing? What are we supposed to be doing? Oh, okay. They're just, it wasn't this chaotic day where like literally those of us who had the time and could watch the riots during the 2020 and you're watching all day media of this store on fire and they're looting this and they're burning this and they're, or that federal building, I forget what state it was, where they boarded that up with people in it and set it on fire, where they took over that few square blocks in Seattle, the Chaz zone or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And one of the things, you can't really find it. I think you can find like the daytime of it. It was May something. I forget what year. Trump was still in. It had to be 2020. It was like in May. Group of protesters outside the White House, fighting with the police, throwing frozen water bottles. I mean, I watched this till 2, 3 in the morning. They had the National Guard finally come out. These people were trying to run across the lawn and get into the White House.
Yep.
And they were screaming about it, kill Trump, do all this. And the media the next day just was laughing about it and portrayed Trump in a bad light because they said they were making fun of the fact that the Secret Service whisked him off to the bunker underneath. Because they were so worried that something was going to happen with the crowd. Even like the Fox News reporter that I was watching, he ended up getting pepper sprayed on accident because he was in the crowd reporting when they were finally getting pepper sprayed. But nobody talks about I don't even think you can find the video online. This is one of the reasons why I started paying more attention, is because when you start looking at these videos, you can't even find them because they're scrubbing them. But like, that's more of an insurrection. I mean, there's a large crowd trying to bum rush the White House to scream and kill the president. And the media, instead of saying anything about it, just simply goes, calling out Trump's manhood for being whisked off to the bunker.
Right. Yeah, it definitely played, the media definitely played against Trump. And again, who runs most of the media are Democrats and Democrat donors and everything. So it was a crazy time in life. It's definitely something none of us will forget about. Yeah. And I know Flat Rock's got something here. It says, I personally believe this was a Dem rep leading up to J6 and afterward family against family. To me, it was a total government psyop. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
I mean, you can make that point because in any large gathering, violence is going to occur. That's just the human nature. And the fact that they refuse to have enough law enforcement to ward off what they clearly believed could be something that could get out of control, that kind of leads you to, I've yet to hear a good answer as to why they did not have enough law enforcement when they knew there were going to be this amount of people there.
Right. Trump asked for 10,000 National Guard. The letter's been shown. It was sent to Pelosi. It never happened. So with that, it also leads me up to, if they thought that that was going to be enough of an issue, that they were going to have to board up all these buildings downtown, why wouldn't they have brought the National Guard in? So,
or at least more police.
Correct.
I mean, there really was just not. I mean, for the amount of people that were there, again, it's just simple numbers. If you believe that that the Trump supporters are these bloodthirsty Nazis that are just out to just destroy everything, why would you not? That's what you can't say in one hand that you think these people are just ruthless and they want to do this, that, and this, and then go, we don't need any more police. We're good with this 50, 60 people that we got. We're good.
Yeah,
it doesn't jive. 40,000. Yeah, it does. It just doesn't jive.
Right.
And again, it's simple human. It's like, I mean, any large gathering with impassioned people with a perceived injustice, chaos is going to ensue. And in my mind, I wish that none of that would have happened. And definitely those people who went into the building, like, some probably didn't know, like, oh yeah, I can go walk in here. A lot.
Yeah, the doors are open. Let's go.
Right. But I mean, damn well you can't sit at Pelosi's desk and put your feet up on Pelosi's desk.
Agreed.
Like, that's just, like, just same as like, the dude with the horns or whatever who went into like the big speech room or whatever and was like, well, if you couldn't do that on a tour, why do you think you can do that right now? Like, right. I get the moment of the day, but like sometimes you gotta like think about that.
Yeah.
But this again, the chaos of the day, that just saying it was just this violent the whole day, like it was like they make it sound like you're watching the 300. Right. And it's just Leonidas battling the Persians all day long.
Right.
And it's just like, that's just ridiculous.
I'm going to read off some statistics from that day. I couldn't get a number, and it would be impossible anyway, since there weren't tickets sold, of how many people were there. I've heard 10,000. I've heard 50,000. I've heard, well, some places at the time were saying 100,000. Definitely don't think that. But there were 1,575 people charged. 1,030 pled guilty. Now, we're talking the basic charges were trespassing, sedition, and what was the other one? Conspiracy and destruction, property destruction. The number of people who completed jury, bench, or stipulated bench trials was 261. The number with mixed verdicts, so they had more than one charge against them, there were 76. A number of convicted on all charges was 181. Number acquitted of all charges, 4. Number of people sentenced, 1,126. 64% received prison time. Median prison time was 240 days. Maximum would be probably Enrique or the Oath Keepers guy probably got the maximum sentences, 20 plus years or something like that. So it's really interesting when you start diving into all these different websites and trying to see and find as much as you can. If you go to like mainstream media websites, this thing said they were carrying Molotov cocktails, but yet there were no fires. Nobody caught anything on fire. So you get so many different stories. So that's Matt. That's why I wanted you to give us an account of what you saw that day. And I thank you for doing that. Because I think a lot of people needed to hear that. And I'm sure there's people in chat. I saw somebody in chat has a neighbor or something that was there. Actually, I think he was the guy that put his feet up on Pelosi's desk, as a matter of fact. What they said.
I think he said it was a neighboring town.
On a neighboring town, pardon me. But some people just don't do smart things.
Yep.
I will go back to what you said and what you and I talked about. This was the worst insurrection that you could call an insurrection.
Oh, yeah.
An overthrow of the government usually involves tanks, guns,
a plan. I mean, even when the Civil War happened, I mean, they had Jefferson Davis, they had a president, they had a cabinet, they had an active working plan on what they were going to do in order to secede from the government.
Yep.
Like, this idea that they were going to go in there and kill these politicians that day and then take over the government and do what? I mean, right. what exactly? Like what? I think people they like to blow this out of proportion and say these words, but it's like the reality is even if there was 10 people that wanted to do, what were they going to do? How were they going to hold this is not the 1800s. Like, even if they would have gotten in there and killed the politicians, there's no taking over the government. Nope. Like, law enforcement, the military would have went in and squashed that. Yep. And whoever was supposed to take over the next in line for each of those, and a week, 2 weeks later, it all would have still continued on.
Right.
Like this idea that they were just going to go in and hold the government. I don't, even now when they talk about Trump's going to hold the government, what would that even look like? It's just not real.
I'm just picturing, all the people that broke in, and then most of the news, all they could talk about was the shaman. And was he going to run was he going to run the country? Is that what that's the kind of thing you have to think
about. Meanwhile, you've got David Hogue or whatever, the dude from
David Hogue,
who's like one of the DNC people now. He's the guy with the meme, like, I was there.
Yeah.
They got nobody to blame but themselves. They picked the worst people. Just Absolutely. The worst.
And the more the media lies, the more everybody turns against them. And that already lean against them. The people that believe everything the media believes or is telling them, they're the ones that like, oh, but CBS said, or even Fox News said. I'm not a fan of any media except independent. And then what I find independent, I'll research myself and prove to myself that this is true. Yeah. That's the only way I think you can get true news.
There was more law enforcement and barriers and fencing at Joe Biden's inauguration than there was for January 6th. When, again, they expected an army of bloodthirsty Trump supporters that were there to take over the government.
Yeah.
And they put up those bicycle rack barriers.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, for Joe Biden's inauguration, they had fencing and razor wire.
Yeah. Layers of fencing. They had
Yes.
so much far back, and then look. So there were like 3 tiers of fencing you'd have to go through to get there.
Exactly.
And nobody showed up. Nobody was really there to protest it. So
Nope.
it shows you the difference between us and them, I guess.
Very
Well,
much so.
Yeah. Matt, thanks so much for coming on, brother.
Absolutely.
I greatly appreciate you getting on here and being able to tell your story and sharing some pictures.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, it's nice to kind of talk about it because you go so long not because of people blowing it out of proportion, but for the most part, it
really quick. Did you ever think that they might show up at your door?
Oh yeah.
Did you?
Oh yeah. Once they started like announcing they were just trying to arrest anybody that was there, and you know, if you were caught on camera, and at one point, the day before, my ex mother-in-law had said that she saw me walk past one of the news cameras.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Yeah, and so yeah, like you know, you worry about that, and then you never know when you got these things on your phone, these pictures, and so like I really, you know, other than like a few of my close friends, like I have not really talked about that day because yeah, just the way that they were blowing it out of proportion and making it, you know, once they ran out of people they could get for something, then they were like saying they were going to just get anybody that was there. It was like they really were just trying to prove a point.
Right. Well, again, thanks. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
Hang around. You're gonna be backstage, and we'll join you backstage here in a second. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Appreciate it.
Hold on.
Real quick, Matt, you've gotten several compliments, so I've flashed them on the screen. So,
thank you.
We really appreciate you, and you have a fantastic voice. You are a great speaker.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you sharing.
Well, thank you very much.
Opening up about your experience.
Yeah. Just stay on. We'll kick you out, and we'll join you backstage.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so to the crowd, join us next Sunday, which is April 27th, and we will be covering the 27 Club.
If y'all don't know,
fascinating show.
If y'all don't know what the 27 Club, it's a talk about actors, musicians, and other folk that have died at the age of 27. We're going to delve into that. It's actually a club that started. They called it a club after Kurt Cobain passed. It involved Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison,
Amy Winehouse,
Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, other actors. So we'll get into that, talk a little bit about each one and what happened to them, and then kind of get into what the actual, you know, what they say and why they call it the 27 Club, not just the age. But we'll take a deep dive into that. Matt, again, brother, we'll see you backstage. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And everybody else, until next week, 5:00 Central, we'll see you again.
Yep. Thank you for watching, and thank you to the moderators.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.